Welcome back, agents, to another Division 2 build guide. I'm LtBuzzLitebeer, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you my Dark Hours raid build and my DPS build, which are all kind of one build mixed in together. And what makes this build valuable is the fact that it pushes out high levels of damage, and it's really easy to assemble, so it can benefit new and veteran players alike. But before I begin the build guide, if you haven't yet done so, please take just a second to smash the sub button, and don't forget to ring the bell to receive all future upload notifications from my channel. Alright, let's begin. As I showed you in the intro clip, this build is capable of pushing out some serious DPS, but I don't want anyone out there to look at this build guide and think that I am telling you that this is the absolute best damage build out there. I don't have as much actual time in game as I once did, so for me, it was really important to have a build that can push out DPS, be versatile enough to use with my best and favorite weapons like rifles, LMGs, and assault rifles, and all the while, and most importantly to me, be easy to assemble and improve on. So if you're like me and you just want to put something together, press the fire button and drop some enemies, here's a build guide for you. Let's get started. First up, let's quickly discuss the weaponry. Now you can use any of these weapon archetypes and mix and match to your personal preferences, but I recommend LMGs, rifles, or assault rifles to pair with this build. I used to use LMGs almost exclusively, and they are still extremely strong. For this build, I was using the Bullet King Exotic Negev, but you could also pair it with the MG5 for its high rate of fire and headshot damage multiplier, or the standard Negev for its rate of fire and ammo belt size, as both are popular. What you are looking for are any of these LMGs with as high attribute rolls as you can find, preferably completely maxed. I know, wishful thinking, but it could happen. LMGs do damage to targets out of cover, which is a multiplicative damage type, making it even more valuable than additive damage, say like weapon damage. So for the third attribute, damage to armor really is what you are looking for, as it is also multiplicative. LMG weapon talents to aim for are Fast Hands, Strained, Killer, if you mostly run solo, or Unhinged if you can control the weapon and keep it on target. Fast Hands can get you a sub 2-second reload time with an LMG, and Strained can add up to 50% critical hit damage for keeping the trigger held down. Now, I usually try to use critical hit damage mods, and if I am having trouble keeping the LMG on target, I substitute in one accuracy mod to tighten the full auto bloom. Because I wanted added versatility in this build, I crafted my gear selections around this idea, so I can plug in a rifle at any time and do decent amounts of damage. The M1A is what I use almost exclusively, as it has seriously high base damage and it's just easy to handle. Now you could use a Baker's Dozen, but Lucky Shot is not the best weapon talent, so I would recommend to loot a classic M1A with damage to armor as the attribute. Rifles have native baked-in critical hit damage, so what you are looking for is as high a rolls as you can find, and then for the weapon talents, I like Boomerang, but you could also take advantage of Ranger, Rifleman, or Killer, but once again if you mostly run solo with Killer. Now if you spec into the gear I will show you later in this build guide, anytime you switch to your rifle, you will be hitting targets hard with that added critical hit damage, giving you the ability to drop them quickly. If you are using the classic M1A, you're only going to have 3 mod slots, so I use the Crit Chance Underbarrel, Extended Mag, and the Sharpshooter Digital Scope with the Sharpshooter Specialization. Adding to this build philosophy of versatility, I can also plug in my Assault Rifle when I choose, and since ARs are getting a buff for Title Update 10, you may want to start looking for one. Now I personally use the FAMAS with the Strained weapon talent, although you could also use a P416 or the exotic Eagle Bearer with this build. What you are looking for are high rates of fire along with high attribute rolls. ARs feature damage to health, which will help versus red bar NPCs and any tank NPCs, black tusk doggos, or mini tanks, as these enemy types don't have armor bars. Now for the attributes, I would recommend that you look for damage to targets out of cover or damage to armor. Both are multiplicative damage types. Strained is the weapon talent I use, and I highly recommend it, with all the other AR weapon talents kind of falling far behind. Stay away from any weapon talents that add on stability or reload speeds, as these are not needed on an assault rifle. For the mods that I use with my assault rifle, I use the 20-round extended mag, crit damage, optics, and muzzle mods, along with a crit chance underbarrel attachment. If I'm going to be primarily using the LMG or assault rifle, I highly recommend using the gunner spec. Now this specialization has so many perks to really enhance your build, like bonus armor for killing an enemy. Every third reload is 50% faster, the 50-round large pouch if you are using a non-Bullet King LMG, ammo regen, rate of fire increase awarded on kill, and the armor kit for this spec is simply insane. If I know that I'm going to be doing a lot of mid to longer range engagements, I may switch over to my M1A, and if I do so, I'm going to equip the sharpshooter spec for the increased headshot damage, better weapon handling, bonus armor and cover, and armor regen. Now it goes without saying that if you do use a different specialization, make sure to match the 15% weapon damage to the weapon that you are using. You can easily respec a specialization to match your weaponry, and then don't forget to save the loadout. Okay, jumping into the gear, and here is the build, and I use this for both the raid and for most missions, including legendary. Now the idea here is that you want to invest into crit, so that is critical hit chance and critical hit damage. Now I have several different versions of this loadout and I can swap between them, and it really depends on how much incoming damage I am taking and or do I have a healer in my squad. For when I am going for max damage output, here is the build I use. 3 pieces of Providence defense, Petrov Contractor's gloves, Overlord Fox's Prayer Kneepads, and then I have some flexibility with the mask. I personally like using the Coyote's mask for all the different crit bonuses for both me and my squad, but I can also mix in different types like the Y'all Hollow Man, etc. Most of the time I am using the exotic Coyote's mask, and I have one that is nearly maxed out in weapon damage, crit hit chance, and crit hit damage, and I pair it with a maximum critical hit damage mod. The gear talent of Pack Instincts is really powerful, and it buffs not only my crit, but my squad's as well. And FYI, if you have more squad members also using this mask, the crit bonuses will stack. The body armor for my max damage output build is the Sacrifice, with as much crit as I can stack onto it, although I will still be on the hunt for one with crit hit damage over explosive resistance, but this piece is still quite good. Perfect Glass Cannon amps up my outgoing damage by 30%, and amp damage is multiplicative, and therefore adds more value to my build versus straight weapon damage. Now, the only downside to this talent is that all incoming damage is also amplified, but by 60%, so if you are not careful, you can get folded in the blink of an eye. Now, this is where having a competent healer on your squad comes in handy. Now, if I am not feeling good about my chances of survival, or I'm looking to help out the squad, I can switch over to this Grupo Sombra body armor piece with Overwatch. I am once again fully committed to crit and can gain 12% weapon damage for attaching to cover for 10 seconds. Now, I personally like using this piece on the raid as I stay in cover, and the damage buffs also apply to my squad members. Now, Grupo Body Armor will roll with the utility mod slot, so I used my recal to move this one over to an offensive mod slot. Other acceptable body armor talents could include Obliterate, Unbreakable for a bit more survivability, Focus if you're using your rifle and have an 8x scope equipped, or Spark if you want to use a turret or drone to proc the damage buff. Very quickly, and for the holster, I use another piece of Providence with weapon damage, crit hit chance, and crit hit damage. The backpack is again Providence defense, with more weapon damage, crit hit chance, and crit hit damage paired with a crit hit chance mod. I personally recommend and use Vigilance for outright damage output, with other possible alternatives being Concussion, Composure, Unstoppable Force for mostly solo work, or Versatile for weapon swap predicated amp damage. However, for me, Vigilance is the way to go, as my build gains 25% damage unless I take damage, where then I have a 4-second cooldown before gaining back the buff. You could also use the named gear piece, the Gift, with Perfect Vigilance for slightly more outgoing damage and a 1 second less cooldown timer. Even though they had their damage to armor attribute lowered, the Petrov Contractor's gloves are still incredibly powerful, and they're going to pair very well when you choose to equip an LMG. These are rare, and I recommend you farm targeted loot areas for gloves or Petrov until you get them to drop. Now ideally you want all red attributes, and I have gone with weapon damage, damage to armor, which is multiplicative, and critical hit damage. The named Overlord Kneepads, Fox's Prayer, are still strong, even though like the Contractor's gloves, they had their attribute rolls lowered in a previous update. Now Fox's Prayer Kneepads work really well with any weapon type, and especially so when I equip my rifle. Damage to targets out of cover is a multiplicative damage type that applies to any NPC type as long as they are not attached to cover. Now what you want here are all offensive attributes, and I have chosen critical hit damage. Now overall, there are still little bits of improvements here and there. I mean, I could farm like crazy and get a little more crit chance or find a little bit better mod, but I just want to be able to drop into a mission and have fun, and that is what this build will do. Now for those of you that like to see the raw stats, when I'm fully spec'd into damage output with perfect glass cannon and using my M1A rifle, I am at 133% weapon damage, 52.2% crit chance, 148.4% crit damage, and 130.4% headshot damage, and this is using the sharpshooter spec. When I equip my more conservative raid build setup along with my LMG or assault rifle, I am in the 120% range for weapon damage for either archetype, have 57.6% critical hit chance, and have 144.2% critical hit damage. Now I know these are not the absolute best damage numbers imaginable, but that is not what this is all about. This build is about getting the most damage out of a build in the shortest amount of playtime and having fun while doing so. So stay tuned to this video so you can see some clips of the builds I've shown you in action on the raid and in various missions, and make sure to leave any questions or suggestions you have in the comment section below. If you haven't yet smashed that sub button for intensive Division coverage, please do so, and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss an upload notification. If you liked the video, rate it with a thumbs up. If not, with a thumbs down. If you feel like supporting my full-time content creation outside of YouTube, look in the video description for links to my Patreon and Teespring accounts. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter for all my latest thoughts concerning most things gaming related, and I hope you enjoy the upcoming clips. Until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.
Of transcripts and notes from months of prisoner interrogation. Information stored on a military-grade laptop kept in the main holding area downstairs. The first priority is to release the prisoners to keep the True Sons busy. You'll be looking for some... Well.
Throwing a frag!
Like you got True Sons reinforcements headed your way.
North or south side?
Both. Heavier concentration to the south.
With all those gates sealed, the north exit should be closer.